Best Breakfast Show award, which I was up for. Went to the awards and we won it. It was like the most ridiculous thing in the world.
There's these two big blocks of flats in Salford. We're broadcasting from one of them, and we're getting them to flash the lights on and off.
Be hanging out the window and there'd just be hundreds of lights just flashing all over the place.
George Harrison's kind of spiritual path called to me, and I kind of like resonated with a lot of the stuff, that the articles and interviews and books I read about him.
It's just you and the pan and the cacao. There's something very spiritual about making cacao, and it's not the same as making a cup of tea.
I know what you're going through, mate. Like you're not having a breakdown, you're having a breakthrough.
He means the world to me. I don't think I could have got through a lot of the stuff I got through in my life if he hadn't been by my side.
He means everything to me. He's a brother.
Bring together the artists of their audience like never before.
Hello guys, welcome to the Full Power podcast with me, Liam Browne. I've got two amazing guests today. The first males on the show, which is exciting. But these two guys, actually, every time I meet them, every time I'm in their presence, my spirits really raise up. I feel motivated, I feel inspired every time I meet them. I love their journey. I love the fact that without Dragon's Den, without the BBC, we wouldn't have met. And they're one of the best things for me and best people that I've met since that happened for us. So let's do this. Adam, Rikk, welcome to the show, boys.
Thank
Good
you
to
for
see you,
having us.
man.
Yeah,
it's really good. What a lovely intro. I wasn't expecting that. I'm like shocked. I don't know what to say.
And the Buzz FM, you know, thanks for bringing the Buzz FM to our attention, and thanks for bringing the Buzz FM to the people of Manchester and further afield and everything that you're doing. So what's the Buzz FM? What is it?
Well, technically it's called the Buzz Manchester.
Buzz Manchester. Sorry, not FM, yeah.
It's the, you know what?
Get rid of FM.
No,
It's the old school way of calling radio. That's what it is. Everybody does it.
So many people do that because that's what most radio stations were like.
Yeah.
But we're actually nearly 4 years old now. Right. So like we've told you our story before, but I suppose not everyone knows it. We've been friends since we were babies.
Yeah.
Our parents knew each other, so we kind of grew up in the same area and
Where was that?
Whitefield.
Yeah.
North Manchester, yeah.
Yeah.
And but then Adam and his family moved to America how old were you when you moved away?
It's about 8.
So we kind
we
of
moved to California. We were only there for about a year and a bit because my parents got homesick, so we ended up coming back.
But we actually went out to see you. We actually went out and as a family and met him in California.
Yeah.
We've got this. Probably the first picture of us together is on a hill in San Diego. Like me, my brother, him and his sister.
His little kid.
Yeah, like 7, 8 years old, whenever it was.
And when we came back, we moved in across the road from him.
All right.
And that was literally, that was it then.
So we just kind of...
So your mum and dad and his mum and dad were really tight.
Yeah, they were pals.
They were pals.
And and then obviously we became friends because we had the same interests. It was just music. We were obsessed with music.
Yeah.
And there wasn't many of my pals at that age that were as into music as I was and he was, and that's what brought us together.
It was like 1982, 3, 4. So the music was unbelievable at that period of time.
Going out then?
No, we were just. I'm a year or so older than Adam. So we were at 12, 13. He was working in a record store in Bury.
Right.
Illegally, probably.
Yeah, it was
12,
far
13.
too much child
I don't even know
labour.
how that came about. But so he was working there, getting the bus.
Yeah, I loved it.
And then I'd go and meet him there while he was working and hang out at the record store.
Right.
And we were just obsessed. So he was spending all his money on 7-inch singles, 12-inch singles and stuff. And then we'd go home and then we'd just listen to them, obsessed with the radio. Like we'd spend all our spare time for some reason on the stairs in my parents' house. I think it was the only place that we could get the best signal for the radio. It was like halfway up our stairs and we could stretch the phone line. It was landlines in those days. We could stretch the line from my mum and dad's bedroom to this point in the house so we could call into the radio.
And we weren't annoying the rest of the family, you see. It was just like a little bit of quiet space for us.
So that's what we just kind of did. And then we'd go over to his house because he had a better stereo system. His dad had given him this like mega massive piece.
It's like in a wood cabinet.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, do you remember?
Yeah, it was like furniture, this thing. It wasn't like technology. Yeah. And we'd then go back to his house and make radio shows and impersonate what we'd just been listening to.
Right.
Pretend to be the DJs, playing music. And then
Oh, you was training?
Yeah, we
Pretty
didn't,
much.
we
But we
just
didn't know we were doing it. We were just having a laugh.
Yeah.
It was just like aspirational.
Yeah.
And I must have known then that I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to be some sort of entertainer.
Yeah.
And there was something magical about radio compared to any other medium in that way, that everybody listens to. Even if you're all sat in the car listening to the same thing together, you're actually listening to it individually. Because the way you perceive things is different to the person that's sat next to you. And everybody sort of tries to sort of generate a mental image of what they think's happening, where the studio is, what the presenter's looking at, what he can see or she can see, and the views and this, that and the other. And that's why I recommend nobody ever go into a radio studio, because it kills the magic.
Yeah.
Literally.
Do you know what's funny though? Obviously, like I'll go into like our story and like the synchronicities of us meeting and stuff. But like when I was a kid growing up, like when we first met you, and I was like, I remember you won the Sony Award, and you beat, was it Sarah Cox?
Zoe Ball.
Yeah. And but I always envisaged you. I don't know why, you was mixed race in my head.
Really?
He was a mixed race guy from like the north of Manchester who drove around in like a nice Golf. That's just what I imagined. Like from the like the Salford Superstars song and stuff, the mixes it used to do. But yeah, like I said to you when I first met you, like I'm really, really grateful and thankful for those moments, because I was in vans working, do you know what I mean? Driving on the Princess Parkway in the traffic, and you just lightened those mornings. Like it was like such a blessing, and the whole of Manchester, it's kind of like come alive with this show that you was doing.
It was
it on Galaxy?
It was on Galaxy, yeah. So I'd been at Piccadilly, Key 103, and then I'd sort of left and gone back and then left, and then I got the job at Galaxy to do breakfast. I'd never done breakfast radio
Galaxy
before.
wasn't that big then, was it?
No, it was hardly known. It was a tiny little station, and this guy, Jim, who was the programme director, saw something in me that he thought I could bring to this particular show. And we put this show together, but we did it for no other reason than the team of us just wanted to have a really good laugh. We wanted to try and push the boundaries, because everything else that was on the radio at the time was a bit safe. And it's almost like, you've got this sort of line that you don't want to step over. We just made sure our heels were firmly on it. So we were cheeky, we were rude-ish, but without being offensive. And we just had a laugh without caring about what other people think. We just did it, and we just did these stupid little games and song parodies and created these characters.
I was trying to look for them on YouTube, because I was trying to remember them, because they were in my head for about 20 years, and then they'd gone. And I was like, what was that superstar I want? And
Benno and Gizzo.
Something triggered it.
It was Benno and Gizzo.
Benno and Gizzo were the two
There's
characters.
two.
And I don't think we'd probably get away with doing those characters in this day and age, because people may slightly be offended by the way they sounded or the language that they used or whatever.
Yeah, they were chavs.
Yeah,
basically.
It was great.
Before chavs, you invented.
I used to sing that song all the time.
Oh, Salford Superstar. Yeah, that literally happened because me and the guy that did my voice impressions on the show, who was the worst voice, with respect, Mike, I love you very much, but his impressions were so bad, that's what made him good, if that makes sense. It was like the worst impressions we could get away with trying to fake people with. And after the show, it's back in the days when I used to smoke, so the show would finish at 10 o'clock, we'd go outside and have a cig. And we were stood outside, it was pouring down on Portland Street in town, and this Subaru pulled up outside, this blue Subaru. It was like really impressive, like racing car outside, and these two lads in shell suits walked past, and one said to the other, "That car's tops, man, innit?" And that was it. I looked at him, he looked at me, go, "These are the characters we need to do." And that's when that whole Benno and Gizzo thing started. And the bottom line was, we know people are in a bad mood going to work in the morning, generally. It's, they're getting up, they're going to the back, the same grind, this, that and the other. All we wanted to do was just make that journey. So when you got into work, you felt good, rather than, oh God, I'm going into work, it's my 9 to 5, or what have I got, to look forward to when I get in, or not look forward to when I get in. It was, what could we do to just entertain as much as human? And if you listen to that show, you'll know we literally, every 5 minutes there was something happening. It was just packing it in every day.
Loved it.
It was good fun.
Loved it.
Loved doing it.
Sorted that commute out. But so before we go into like your journey to Buzz Manchester, obviously you two growing up in Manchester, and then you've gone into radio and you've gone into
TV. What happened was
then fashion.
Yeah. Like we both went to. We had a mobile disco business. He started a mobile disco business when he was 14. he was naturally the person. He was the one that wanted to be on the mic, and I always wanted to be in the background picking the records and coming up with the ideas and stuff like that. And we've intuitively always been that way. He'd go out front and he'd be the kind of character, and then we went through school different schools, but then he started, it must have been the end of August, we were a bit on loose end. I dropped out of Manchester Poly, he was not doing anything, our parents were kicking our asses, and we were just, smoking too much weed. Yeah, get a job, smoking too much weed, just at a total loose end. It was 1989, 1990, so Manchester is the centre of the universe at this point. Manchester's kicking off, the Hacienda, everything. It's the worst time to be doing your A-levels or studying.
It's just too much. Yeah,
it's just too much. Things. So he says to me, I'm starting a TV and radio course at Salford Uni next week, and you should come on it. I'm like, well, I've got nothing else to do. So I was like, they'd closed applications, but I knocked on the door with him, and he kind of let me in, and he said, I'm just starting, can my mate join? So we joined.
Yeah.
And that was it for us. I mean, he actually left after about a few months because he got a job.
I got offered a job
at Sunset.
Yeah, it was
that radio station?
Yeah, Sunset Radio.
That was on 102 before Galaxy. It was like 3 stations before Galaxy, but on that signal.
So he was working at 19. He was on air. So
he was presenting then.
Well, he wasn't meant to be, but it was a pirate radio station
with a license.
With a license, basically.
Yeah.
It was at the top of New Mount Street, the whole of the top building of 23 New Mount Street, and it was kind of like a real multicultural station. Yeah. They had like an Irish show. It was like black soul music, Chinese. They had everything on there. It was brilliant, and they basically gave him the keys to the door and said, like, you want to go on air between like 12 and 4 in the morning.
My way in, really. Just wanted to get in. I knew that once I could get in, I could then try and prove who I was and prove my worth to get a show on air. And I'd been going in for a few weeks, and then I was in there one night. It was about 10:30 at night. I was sitting in with another DJ. I was just like soaking it up, trying to learn. And the boss came in and said, "Oh, the guy that's supposed to be on air tomorrow at 1 o'clock's just called in sick." So me being the gobshite I am, went, "I'll do it." And he sort of turned around, looked at me, and was like, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm the person that can get you out the shit tomorrow and do that show for you." And he was just so taken aback by my cheek. He went, "All right, then you're on." Sweet. And that was it. That was the first ever radio show I ever did. That was the beginning of my career.
Wow. So when you was both doing on the top of the stairs and that, is that when you knew this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I knew all along that I wanted to DJ.
Refreshing, isn't it? Because like I didn't know what I wanted to do until I was like 40.
I was about 7 or 8, and I knew I wanted to be a DJ. In fact, my mum's got a picture of me at 3 years old with this tiny little toy record player it was called a Frisco Disco. And it was like a Tommy type toy, plastic with thick grooves in it, and you put the pretend needle on it, it'd spin around and make a horrible noise. And I just used to sit there with my headphones on, playing with it all day. Yeah. So I think it was just, I think it's in the blood, it's in the DNA.
We did what we thought was daft stuff, daft shit at the time, because we were kids. He had this thing, this Mr. Microphone, you could buy it from like Tandy or whatever. Yeah. Remember the stores, Tandy? Yeah. Like, they were like Dixon's and Curry's before. Yeah. And it was this little microphone, and you could tune it into a frequency. And if you could get if you were 3 rooms away, you could speak in one room on the mic, and it would come up on the radio on that frequency. Yeah. And then he had
the greatest toy ever for
brilliant
me.
For him.
so much fun.
He'd go in the other room and like talk nonsense to me in the other room, like. For some reason, that's entertaining when you're that kid.
Well,
right?
I felt like I was doing a radio show because it was coming out the radio speakers. So I was like,
but then you get that hunger. He's like, broadcasting to one's all right, but I want to broadcast to more. Yeah. So he commandeered. He's always had the tech savvy and this ability to like make stuff happen, and he just. You can describe
that Mr. Microphone thing. Well, I thought, well, if it can broadcast like round the house, maybe if I put a bit more power through it and a bit of this and a bit of that, I might be able to get like down the road. Right. So I took this thing apart, and it had like a 9-volt battery in it. I thought, forget that, I put a 12-volt through it, and took the aerial off with this little piece of wire at the back of it and connected it to a roof, climbed on the roof of my parents' house
climbed up
with like a mag-mounted aerial with a biscuit lid over the chimney, smacked it on, came down, turned it on, and we were literally going about 1.5 miles. So I was like broadcasting to my neighbourhood.
How was you testing it then? You was just going further and further away?
Ringing friends around the corner going, can you hear us?
driving around Whitefield, going like ring on the phone, and we weren't because there weren't mobile phones then. We'd drive and go right. It goes to the end of Park Lane. It goes to the end of Park, and just come back and then go. It goes this far. It goes this far. And then.
How old was you then?
17.
So it's
17. Just driving.
Just messing about.
And we had mates that were doing their A levels, so they'd ring us up on the landline, and go, "Can you play?" Whatever song, like New Order. So we'd play New Order and then they'd listen to it.
Shout going out to Mark, who's revising for his maths A-level. Followed by the traffic and travel report of the pub car park. It's getting busy, really busy in the Parkfield at the moment. I'd give it 15 minutes if I was.
Proper local news and weather and travel.
Super local.
Yeah, hyper local.
And of course, nobody knew about us except anyone who told us. So that was like the first kind of daft stuff we did. And then after we dropped out the first course and he'd been working at Sunset, we then started a degree together at Salford. And we both lived at our homes, but all our friends were staying in halls that were on the course with us. So a few weeks into the course, we're hanging out at their halls. We don't want to be at home, having a great time. Again, it's 1992, and it's like Manchester's, again, alive, everything's happening. So we're having the best time ever. And then we decide to build a pirate radio station at the halls of residence, because like we're on a TV and radio course, so everyone's on our vibe now. Everyone's obsessed with radio. So we create this radio station. We've got the two halls of residence, Eddie Coleman and John Lester.
John Lester, yeah.
These two blocks have been recently renovated.
Oh, I thought these were guys.
No, these are
they were running
I
it.
think they were actually old United players, weren't they? I think they were footballers.
In fact, Eddie Coleman might have been somebody who was in the Munich, or one of the Busby Babes.
Okay.
And so there's these two big blocks of flats in Salford, and we're broadcasting from one of them. We've set up this thing, we're broadcasting, and then we flyer every flat in the whole, top to bottom, every flat, saying tune in at 7 p.m. and whatever. So we've got the whole of the uni in the flats is listening to us, and we're getting them to flash their lights on and off. But on air, we're saying, like, if you're on that John Lester, flash your lights. If you're on Eddie Coleman, flash your lights.
Be hanging out the window, and there'd just be hundreds of lights just flashing all over the place. It was mad.
A light, like a massive strobe because of us. and then they busted us on air.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, while we were on air, they kicked the door down, so to speak.
Well, I made it or the uni.
No, the uni.
Well, I made a bit of a schoolboy error. This little Mr. microphone that I'd used for the first pirate radio station from my parents' house, I'd actually turned the frequency over to where Radio 2 was. Right. So obviously people that were trying to listen to Radio 2 in that little near the Salford precinct, and we were in a high-rise, so we were quite high up. It was bleeding over Radio 2. So the next thing, there was a rap on the door. It was like, oh no, we're going to get the gear taken. Luckily we didn't, but we had to switch it off.
Yeah, that was the end of that. What was it called?
ECFM.
ECFM for Eddie Coleman FM.
Yeah.
Under the pseudonyms of DJ Sausage Fingers.
Yeah. Who else was there?
These were MC Spliff and DJ Sausage Fingers.
Right, okay.
So bad.
Brilliant.
Good times.
Yeah, it's all part of the progression.
So yeah, but like, even when we were messing about doing daft stuff, you don't realise it, but your path is lining up for you, and we're just learning, we're just dicking about, just being idiots. But actually, when you look at it now from the buzz and what we're doing, it all makes sense.
Then I left the degree after the first year because I got offered a full-time job at Piccadilly Radio, which was like huge job.
Again,
that I could
with your own show.
With my own show, I was given the graveyard shift 2 till 6 in the morning, which is like the place where you really cut your teeth because you can make mistakes there because you haven't got a massive audience. So I got offered that. So it was like I went to see the uni guy, and he just said, "You've got to do this. You can always come back and finish your degree, but you might not ever get offered a gig like this before. So go do it." And that was it. I've just continued my career from that point. That was like the early 90s.
And so what happened after sort of like the high of like winning that Sony award and that, and then because Galaxy kind of like faded out a little bit after that, didn't it?
Yeah, from that Sony award, it all went downhill. No, it's not quite that bad, but it can be seen as a bit of a kiss of death because you're sort of hitting your peak when you get given that. So the Sony Awards are not called the Sony Awards anymore, and it was like the radio Oscars, if you like. And the one to win, there was 2 awards you really wanted to win. The Gold Award, which means it's like the outstanding achievement, the best of the best, which usually went to somebody like Terry Wogan or one of the old school broadcasters, or the Best Breakfast Show Award, which I was up for, and it was me, Sarah Lucas from Classic FM, and Zoe Ball from Radio 1. And you're thinking, I'm in this piddly little station in Manchester, going up against Radio 1. What are the chances? went to the awards and we won it. It was like the most ridiculous thing in the world. And from that moment...
How did they even hear about you? Like, do you know
you have to submit a tape. So they ask you to submit an hour recording. They'll say, I want Monday on such a date between this hour, and you have to send a tape in. You can't edit it or mess about with it. It's got to be sent as it is. And then your peers judge you. So it's like a bunch of industry professionals that judge. And from that, you all of a sudden you become... in other radio stations' consciousness, and they start to know about you because they didn't know who I was. You know, the London stations didn't have a clue who Adam was in Manchester. And then you start getting interest, and I got asked to go back to Key again because I'd won that award with a much bigger deal and much more money and this, that and the other. Biggest regret of my life, never should have left, because not only was it bad for me, it didn't do much good for Galaxy either, unfortunately, because the guy that took over was great, but it was so different that I think the station sort of hit a crash. It sort of came down with a bit of a crash. I'm not trying to say it was all me and that I created this monster, but we did create a bit of a monster, and when it stopped, it was like, oh. Yeah. And when I went to Key, they wouldn't let me be that person I was on at Galaxy. It was always, no, don't talk like that. Don't say this, don't say that. It was like
the reasons why they got you.
Yeah, exactly. That was literally the conversation I had with them. It's like, why have you asked me to come back here? Why have you given me a deal to come here to turn me into somebody that I'm not? It's like, didn't you employ me because of what I did? Yeah. Well, why are you trying to turn me into somebody? And that, unfortunately, was a bad time.
It was a turning point in the industry as well. As he's just alluded to, radio was changing. It wasn't about personalities. It wasn't about music. It wasn't about listeners. It was about demographics. It was about marketing. It was about commercial sales and advertising. How many can you sell? And so the industry was changing, and you know, you were falling out of love with the industry because you weren't allowed to be who you were. You weren't allowed to play the music you wanted to play. That's the music. Like when you liked his show and when you listened to radio growing up, you trusted the DJ because of their taste in music and the records they played. That was the beauty of it. You took that away, then you're losing half of their personality. If you then stifle their personality, you basically there's no point. And
just that's playing songs.
The difference is the guy that at Galaxy let me just get on with it. He never really interfered. The boss never really interfered. We'd have meetings every so often to discuss what we're going to do, like future-wise, but he never interfered with me or me as a person on air. That sounded wrong. Never interfered with me. Let me just rephrase that.
That's still a good thing.
He never interfered with my job on that radio station. But when I went to the other place, it was too much interference.
T103 weren't interfering with you.
They were massively interfering with me. And that sounded so bad. Edit. So yeah, it was when you've got somebody who's got a specific talent in whatever it is, trying to turn them into somebody they're not. It's like, well, go and you can get anybody who's never done radio before, sit them in a studio and tell them what to do, and you pretty much get a show out of them. But if you're going to bring somebody in because of what they do, why try and
I think that change them?
And then then radio was starting to be the local stations that were built around the community that had heart. They were starting to struggle a bit financially, and so they were bought out by bigger corporations that started to consolidate and rebrand, and radio started to just lose its heart and soul. And then we stopped listening. Even though you were still working and you stopped listening, people that certainly of our generation stopped listening. The adverts were taken over and the music wasn't good. And
it was sad for me because I didn't love it anymore. I was in a job that I didn't love. That I did love. It was my dream, and it was like, it sort of knocks the stuffing out of you a bit because it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for the next 30 years of my life? Come into work and just hate what I do. And people would say, oh, you only work 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. Oh, it's easy, you just sit in a room talking. Yeah, but when you've got such a passion for something...
Yeah, but you've got prep.
There's that, but it was more of having that passion kicked out of me. It was something that I loved so much. I felt a bit disappointed, actually, and thought, oh dear, do I stay here? Do I keep doing what I do? Do I find something else to do? It was,
and we can't, and because of that, family life kicks in as well. You know, you're at a certain stage of your life, married and kids and stuff, and then we both ended up in family businesses.
Right, okay. You've gone from radio.
He's pretty. He dipped in and out.
I was dipping in and out. I was still doing shows every so often, but it was like I had this opportunity in the family business because my dad wanted to retire, and it was a business that I had absolutely zero interest in, but I'd lost interest in my love. Which was that, and it was like, well, I'm going to go and do this. This is easier. And then after a few months, I was like dipping and doing weekend shows on the odd radio station, just to keep your toes dipped in the water. Yeah, exactly. And
we were obviously still good friends and kept in touch, and we talked over the years constantly about doing stuff together and radio stations, and even at one point we were thinking of doing a podcast before even podcasts were kind of much of a thing. We were always scheming and planning, but life had taken us different directions, and we're both in family businesses. I'd been in the TV industry in kind of a similar way, falling out in love with it. And then we found ourselves at this stage of life where actually we were working in businesses that were great, like they were ticking over, they were paying us a wage, but we weren't loving what we were doing. And in fact, I actually got to the point where I was just completely burnt out. The fashion business that I was in was really all-consuming, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger and more stressful and more crazy and more manic, and my health was suffering. And I think we talked originally when we got together that actually we've all been on this journey in different stages of our life, and I at a very young age went on a bit of a journey with like meditation, because I had what was told to me when I was very young, 18, that I'd had a breakdown. That's what they said to me,
At 18?
Yeah. Then I was suffering from panic attacks and anxiety and depression. And this was in 1991. Again, similar time. It wasn't helped by the substances we were imbibing and the lifestyle we were leading, for sure. But there was no talk of mental health, or nobody, especially for men, you just didn't have the language or the communication. So the doctors and the people that I was seeing, just everybody said, he's had a breakdown. That's how they put it to me. And I believed that at the time because I didn't know any better. I just thought, what's happening to me? Have I done too many drugs? Is it the way I'm living? And he was watching me go through this, and he was kind of suffering in his own way with kind of what would now class as mental health issues. But we didn't know that. We just thought we were, this was the norm. And so the good thing of that was it put me on a path of self-discovery, because I realised the doctors and they wanted to medicate me, and I did go on medication for a while, but it made me feel awful. So, and I'd sit there with psychologists or psychiatrists, and they wouldn't even look at me. They were just looking at a notepad, and there was and I started making shit up in the meeting, even though I was cutting my own nose off to spite my face. I'd be sat there, and I'd test them to see if they were listening by saying daft shit, and they weren't listening. So I just realised no one was going to help me here. So somehow, it was because of music again, but George Harrison, the Beatles, I was obsessed with the Beatles, and George Harrison's kind of spiritual path called to me. And I kind of like resonated with a lot of the stuff, the articles and interviews and books I read about him. So I started reading like the autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And this weekend I was 18 years old. I managed to get hold of a copy. And that book really just like blew my mind, and I just knew that there was some other way to find happiness and peace of mind again. I had no idea what that was, and there was no path carved out for me. I managed to find a yoga class like in Whitefield. That was it. There was one notice board that I found, and it had one yoga class. A little old lady called Pauline ran a yoga class, and like George Harrison, yoga, maybe that'll help. And Adam would come along, like knew what was up to, and we kind of were we were in it together. I think you were probably feeling that whatever I was going through, you were going through in your own way. You just didn't know it. You didn't know where. Yeah,
and it was also because sort of what you say is playing it down a little bit, but you were in a bad way, and it was horrendous to watch. It was one of the worst things, and I can still, if I close my eyes, I can still see him in that mess that he was in when he was 18, 19, and it was so dark that I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit for the way you came out of that and came through that and found your path, because your path then led me on my path.
Yeah, but actually, and his radio is the link here, funnily enough. So Adam started working at Key while I was going through this really bad time, and I'd just come out of hospital, and I was really fragile. And he's kind of said he got friendly with a few of the guys from Key 103, And he'd drag me out, literally. I didn't want to leave the house, and he'd say, come with me, we'll come out tonight, and we're going to see our friends, Jonathan, and they were both working in the radio, and Simon, and we went to their flat in Salford, and I kind of sat there, and it was just quiet, but I was listening to these guys. They were all working at Key 103 and whatever. And then a couple of weeks later, he said, oh, Jonathan's having a flat warming party at the top of our road in Whitefield. Come with me. And I was like, I'm scared. I don't want to go. I don't know anybody. They're all media, radio types. And what am I going to do there? Yeah. And he said, oh, I'll come with me. He was just like a really good friend, just trying to get me out. He said, if you don't like it or you're not feeling good, then we'll come home or you can walk home. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll go. So I went to this party and I sat there on this couch, kind of just like really timid. All these media types were like hugging and kissing and darling, loving. And he was in the midst of all that. Very
flamboyant.
You know, he was because he was like making his way in the industry. He was right hobnobbing with them all. And this one guy walked in, and his eyes caught mine, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, an older guy. And then he suddenly went over to this corner of the room, and so he was surrounded by people, and I could see he was like talking, and these people were fascinated with him. Yeah. And I knew he was, because I'd heard there was a guy called Josh, and he was like this psychic that Jonathan had told us about, he'd been seeing. That's what he called him, a psychic, a medium. But he wasn't that, it turned out. He was just this very spiritual, kind of peaceful warrior type guy. Anyway, I was just looked and I wanted to talk to him. I just knew there was a resonance and a connection. I just knew I had to talk to him, but I was too fragile to go over. So I went into the kitchen to make myself a drink, and he'd spotted me and he followed me into the kitchen. And he said to me, I can help you get off your medication, you know. I was like, oh, no one had talked to him. No one else knew. And he went, he's kind of told me, he says, I know what you're going through, mate. Like, you're not having a breakdown. You're having a breakthrough. Like, he just said this to me, and like, whoa, this is, like, that just brought me alive instantly, because it kind of made everything that I'd turned bad suddenly feel like a path and part of my journey. Yeah. So he gave me this card with his number on it, and he said, give me a call. I'll sort you out. And he's a stranger at this point. I have no idea who he is. I only know him through Jonathan. Yeah. But I'd seen him giving these cards out. Anyway, I called him up a couple of days later and went to see him. He was living in Salford. And he said to me, you were the only real person in that room, you know. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you're the only real person in that room. You were honest and vulnerable. And he said, I said, you were giving cards out to everybody though. And he said, I was giving blanks out to everybody, but they were so up their own arse, none of them noticed there was no numbers on them. You were the only one I gave a number to. And that guy, through the radio connection, because he was still a good friend of ours, changed my life and saved my life, because he got me and he knew what I'd been through, because he was a bit older, he was 15 years older, and he'd been on that path, the kind of self-discovery. Yeah. But again, I had no one else to talk to about this. And then me and Adam started going on to Josh's meditation classes, and you know, this was very early. This is like 30 years ago. And that was just...
And it was nowhere then, was it?
There was nothing.
It was quiet. You didn't chat about it because people thought you were like a not right if you were getting involved in this.
Yeah, mental was the thing.
Yeah, it's like weird new age nonsense. Yeah.
So it was like, we were early to it, but it was the path that, like, just thankfully saved me. So you know, when you get to that point where all the bad, crazy stuff that you turn bad suddenly aligns, and then it all makes sense, and you actually can't look at it as bad. No, you don't look at it as mistakes anymore.
Without it, you wouldn't be getting
So
it's a blessing.
Every bit of it. And then I just learned so much so quickly. And then at times I'd be able to kind of like help Adam when he was going through stuff. And then we've just done that with each other ever since. And then working together like we are now, it's just been a joy. Like literally, we're just so connected and so on our mental health and well-being. Like everything is about being creative, being fun, joy, love, you know, positivity. Like our deal was when we started the Buzz, and we'll go through that funny story of how that happened if you want. But our handshake was like, if this has got to be joy and fun, and the minute it stops being fun, we're stopping. Yeah. And like I can hand on heart say, and we've been through a lot over the last 4 years together. It's never not been like that joyous. Well, like
that's what I mean. You can go through shit experiences or shit moments, but you can still enjoy them or be happy within them. It's like people think when there's something difficult, I've got to be upset about this. It's like, no, you just go through something difficult, enjoy it, navigate it, and actually have a smile while you're doing something that feels a little bit uncomfortable.
I think you've got to be grateful
through it.
You've got to be grateful for the good and bad. The good stuff that comes is great. Be grateful, enjoy it, love it. The bad stuff that comes through as well, which can be as much as the good stuff, and sometimes worse. You have to embrace that and say, no, this is a good thing. This is there's a lesson here.
Leads to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we've definitely that deal was for it to be joyous and put our health and well-being first. And because of that, we're always never, not the two of us are never down or up at the, we're always able to balance each other out with that. And it's just, for us, it's the only way to do things now, right?
And it's a beautiful relationship to observe. Obviously, I've not spent loads and loads of time with you, but just the energy between you, and now listening to that story, it's actually fucking made me emotional. Just that connection you've had and how prominent you've been in each other's journeys. So from you stopping the radio and kind of going back into the family business to then birthing Buzz Manchester, what was that period of time?
Wow.
How long was that?
It was actually the way it came to fruition was out of something quite dark and horrible, actually. So
different.
It's like this. It was dark and horrible. So I'll try and get through this as best as I possibly can. Yeah. But I was doing the radio and running this business, and I was doing the both, and it was a case of my dream was always I wanted to build a house, I wanted to build my own house, I wanted to design it myself and make the rooms, build a studio and have all these wonderful things. And luckily having the business and the radio allowed me that second income to be able to save up to be able to do this building project. So I started building this house. It took nearly 2 years to complete. And I'm going to really cut this very long story as short as humanly possible. But we'd moved into the house. So there was me, my ex-wife now, and my 2 kids. And we moved into this house. And then about 2 or 3 months later, she said on a Sunday afternoon, out of nowhere, everything's been fine. We'd been together for nearly 30 years. Everything's been fine. That's it, we're done.
Wow. And that was it?
Over a bagel on a Sunday. Literally, I was putting cream cheese on a bagel and she went, we're done. I'm like, what are you talking about? And at that moment, my world started to crumble very, very quickly. My son was due to go to university 2 weeks later. He was starting at Liverpool University 2 weeks later. And my daughter was about 12, really impressionable. And she was quite a meek little girl, wasn't she? She never really said boo to a goose. She does now, but she never did before. And it was quite clear that this was the end of my marriage.
Right.
Couldn't quite figure out what was going on. She never really gave anything away. But I knew that I couldn't fight this. This was the inevitable was happening. I sort of had a bit of a meltdown a couple of days later. The first person I actually rang was Josh, who Rikk was telling you about before. And I was uncontrollably hysterical because I didn't know what to do. I knew nothing. Me and her are childhood sweethearts. We've been together since we were 16, 17. Went to see him. He started to try and get my head straight. We had to live with each other for a few months as well while we were selling the house. Luckily, my son had gone off to uni, so he didn't have any part of that and he couldn't see what was going on. But my daughter was living in a really toxic, horrible place. Not that there was any nastiness going on and shouting and screaming, because I kept really quiet, but the energy was freezing cold. You could have cut it with a knife. When people walked in the house, like my mum or my dad or her mum, it was like this horrendous energy. It wasn't even cold. I can't explain what it felt like. It was just thick and dark.
Yeah.
And we put the house on the market. We sold the house. She went off her way. I went to find a flat when I knew where she was going to be living so I could be as close to my daughter, because my kids, to me, are everything. I just wanted to be with my kids. And I decided to go on a holiday on my own. I was going to go to America.
Your business has gone under.
Yeah, I got rid of the business as well. I didn't want anything to do with the kitchen business. Yeah, I was in the kitchen business. So it was like, no, I'm being... It was almost something in the back of my mind said, there's a fresh start coming here. So everything that you weren't enjoying and hating now's your time to just get rid.
Might as well get it all done.
So I was like, right, kitchen business, marriage gone, kitchen business gone, whatever.
Within you.
Yeah,
sold a house, got on a plane, flew to Miami.
Yeah.
I was going to stay with some friends who lived out there. The day after I arrived, the first COVID lockdown was about to happen. It was like everyone was talking about it. The flights were being stopped, and the borders were being closed. I'm like, if I get stuck here, I'm in all sorts of trouble. I need to get home. I just need to get home. So it was supposed to be a 3-week holiday, ended up being a 3-day holiday. Right. So I luckily managed to get on a flight back, and I got on the plane, and it was one of these new planes that had Wi-Fi on it. I was like, oh, amazing, I can message. I've got Wi-Fi on a plane, this is brilliant. And I sat down on this chair. We were about half an hour into the flight, and just something landed, and I texted him going, want to start a radio station?
He actually, the bit he misses is, he told me that he was coming home after 3 days of his dream holiday. I knew where his headspace was, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to be in the worst state ever. I didn't hear from him for several hours on the flight. I just thought, I'm dreading the phone call when he lands, what he's going to say, where his head's going to be at. Little did I know that he was concocting the buzz in this 8-hour flight. It all came together in his head. So then he messaged me to say, or he rang me when he landed and said, do you want to start that radio station that we've always talked about? We were locked down. 2 days early, we'd been locked down. Nobody knew what was going to happen in the world. My business was on hold as well. I just said, yeah, what the heck? Why not? And that was it.
Yeah, moved into a little flat, started buying all the equipment up. Never wired anything up before in my life, not properly, and I couldn't get any help from anybody because it was lockdown. So it was like me and Professor YouTube and a soldering iron, and put that wire there and that there and plug that in there, and literally just built a radio station from watching YouTube videos and a bit of Googling about, and we got on air, didn't we? Pretty quick.
It's the next day he went off, and I knew he was going to take care of the technology. Together we cobbled together, like we put the music, we were constantly just sharing ideas of music, recommendations, and then I put together a newsletter, a website, and we just went out there. We knew exactly in one phone call what the vibe, the voice, the attitude of the station was.
Tell us about that. Right. What was the mission?
So
what did you want to do with it? What did you want it to become?
The mission was to create the radio station that we wanted to listen to, that hadn't existed for decades. Yeah. The radio station that was like, no adverts, no news, no weather, no travel, none of that nonsense. Nothing that dragged you down. Yeah. And music that just elevated your soul.
Just good vibes.
Just good vibes straight away. Just made you feel good. And there's something that like could bring people together, a community again. People could like listen together and listen live. Something that just wasn't happening anymore. People were streaming music, streaming podcasts, and no one was listening together anymore in the way we'd grown up listening to radio. Yeah. So that was the mission. But we knew we wanted to be maverick, bit obnoxious, bit cheeky, bit punk, very man. And because our generation, it was a bit punk, and that kind of punk, and then the 80s and that swagger of that Mancunian kind of swagger. But in a on air and off air, so on through our newsletter, through our social media, we'd just be a bit irreverent and cheeky, make people laugh, not take ourselves too seriously. Everything that the radio stations, commercial radio, wasn't at that time. So that was the mission. So I started a newsletter, a social media, and he started building the station, and then we just went out, and it just resonated with people because we were kind of like, we knew we were tapping into a kind of a slightly nostalgic generation, and people who were passionate about music for the 80s, 90s, maybe the late 70s, the punky kind of era. And also we knew, because they were us who we were talking to, that these people felt like maybe the best times of their life were in the past. But they didn't like that. They wanted to be alive and vibe. They wanted that edge back. They wanted to feel like they were living now. But all them references were past. So we wanted to tip it on its head, like, look back. We always said, look back, don't stare. Look back at the past, but don't stare at it. Let's be here now.
Get stuck in it. Yeah. I meet a lot of people who were in that hacienda thing, and they're still going out and trying to recapture it. And like, got grandkids and you're a fucking mess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
so true.
So
Part of what we were doing as well was a bit of a that's a corporate radio, because they were all shouting about, we're the #1 hit music station, we're #1 in this and #1 in that. It's like, first of all, you're not #1, so it's easy to shout you #1, but you aren't actually #1, somebody else is. But anybody can call themselves #1 in anything they want. I'm #1 in dogs aged 7 to 9. You know what I mean? You can be anything. So instead of this whole shouting about how good we are, we went the opposite way. I mean, one of the first jingles I made said, the skid mark on the underwear of Manchester radio. So instead of us shouting about we're the best, we're actually going, we're shit, and we're proud of it. Come and have some fun.
we just took the mickey out of ourselves. We took the mickey out of radio, and it resonated. We captured an audience of people who wanted to feel good, wanted to feel alive again, and we just resonated. The newsletter, like suddenly we had 1,500 people on a newsletter. And it just grew. They told their friends. The Facebook grew. People started, before we didn't go on air. This was in the March. We didn't launch till August the 16th that year, Adam's birthday, 2020. And before we'd even launched, we were having massive long conversations and communication with people. There were ideas, were excited. There was just this thing building. We had this buzz. And so then we launched, and we just spent the last 4 years honing the sound that comes out the radio, learning to speak to our audience and our listeners and find out what they want and what they like and who they are and what's important to them and what matters to them. And that's what we did. And then we got to a point where we'd financed it ourselves for the first 3.5 years. So we needed to kind of monetize it. But we'd made this kind of rod for our own back by saying we don't do adverts. And we didn't want to do adverts.
In the traditional sense,
like ad breaks, so it would take up 5 minutes every 15 minutes. So we came up with this kind of naming title sponsorship, where a brand will own just an hour of the station's output, and they'll just have 4 idents throughout the hour, but it's really unintrusive.
It's in keeping with the rest of the sound of the station.
The music never stops. They're always, like, with Full Power, you've been on the station with us since like January. And you're always sandwiched between 2 bangers, 2 classic tracks. You know, you could be sandwiched between The Cure and like a 90s dance tune, and it elevates your brand by being in between these 2. And so we started doing that in October last year, and it's working really well. It's like the listeners love it. Don't find it intrusive. They don't switch off. It's great for the brands because it's really creative, it's innovative, it's different. But now we're working on the latest development. We've brought some really cool partners on board with us now. So we're developing the technology to kind of, I believe genuinely that we're going to kind of change the way radio is listened to going forward, and even potentially change the music industry for a certain demographic of artists. Like it's real
big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to annoy a lot of people.
A lot of these old kind of systems, draconian, like, organisations, they're just, everything's crumbling, man. Everything's going to crumble.
It has to.
8 to 10 years and disappear, and a lot of fresh things are going to come in its way, and hopefully these fresh things that replace them are not going to then become like that.
No.
They're going to keep evolving and keep their core principles.
I think we can talk about this, I guess, but that's why we resonated with each other, was we're doing business differently and we're doing it in a different way. And I think we're old enough and we're wise enough now to know we're never going to sell our soul to that, because we know what that is. And money isn't what's the drive. Of course, it's business, so it's a massive factor. But actually, it's about value, and it's about our customers, listeners, and it's about just giving, sharing, helping each other. That's how business is done differently. And that's probably the most important thing for us all, I think, is like working with good people and doing good things.
Definitely, because that's come up with my business. If you feel like, if you do this, you're going to be able to take a little bit off it. And I'm like, and then things have happened, and I'm like, we're not like prepared. And I'm like, no, these people who are packing my CACAO are full of love. They know me. They want the best for me. They want the best for CACAO. They come to my events. They know the shit. They've got to be packing the CACAO. Like, if I just go and employ like loads of people on minimum wage, they don't really give a fuck.
No, the energy,
I think everybody who works for us has got to get an in. They've got to find a doorway into us. Do you know what I mean? And then we bring them in.
First time we ever walked into that room, I remember the first time we walked into your room,
brilliant.
the vibe was electric. It was like there was about 10, 12 people sat at these desks with containers of cacao packing. And everyone had a smile on their face. Somebody was making cacao in the back of the office. It was like there was music
on the
playing.
Floor with you.
It was brilliant.
I've spent 4 hours on the floor. The buzz was on in the background. There's just 12, 15 people. We're like sat on the floor, and it's just love. It's fun. It's joy.
I actually, when I bought the radio, I think I bought the radio for the buzz, the DAB. Because I won't have the radio on in the office because I cannot have the news in my office. I cannot have the news infiltrating the energy that is in that space. So I take full responsibility for the Buzz Manchester because I was trying to manifest that for about the last 10 years. And you guys were my manifestation, so thank you.
Yeah, pleasure, thank you.
No, but it was so... I went off radio so long ago because it was like, this fucking news is going I don't want to know that bullshit. I don't want to know something. I don't even want to know the name of the Prime Minister. I couldn't give a fuck what the name of the Prime Minister is. I couldn't give a fuck about politics. It's like, do my thing. If something changes that affects my business, I'll navigate and swerve around it and find the way that I've got to do it. I'm not going to let it get into this energetic system. And that's what, like, when you guys, like, let's talk about that, our meeting, it was quite
brilliant, wasn't it?
In a way, wasn't it?
It was funny. I hadn't watched Dragon's Den for years. I just happened to watch it that episode, and you came on. You were just radiant. You jumped out the screen. You were cheeky. You were funny, but I instantly resonated with. I knew you were somebody who'd worked on yourself, and you were doing business differently. And I think that I think the dragons that bought into you felt that but couldn't articulate that, and there was and that's why you had such an impact on them. But I messaged Adam straight away and I said, you've got to check out Dragon's Den tonight. Like, there's this guy on it with his cacao business. He's awesome. Like, he's so cool. We've got to just help him on his mission. He's on a mission and he's doing business in a way like we are. He cares and he's doing it differently. We've just got to help him. So I messaged you, I think on Instagram or something.
I had about 5,000. Yours was like ping.
I didn't think you'd respond, to be honest. And then I think separately, he watched it and he messaged back going, "Oh my God, he's awesome! Like, wow, what a beautiful guy. We've got to help him." And then I think you maybe got in touch with Adam first, and then me. So he's on the phone to messaging me.
Well, actually, there's another part of the story. Alison.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Wife.
One of my very old work friends, Stu Allen, the late legend Stu Allen. I'd worked with him for years, and when we started the Buzz, he was the first person I called to do a show at the weekend with Stu, and he was the first person to say yes. It was unbelievable. And then obviously we lost Stu not so long ago, a year and a bit ago, and I was talking to Alison about something, and then for some reason she mentioned cacao, and I went, "Oh, did you see the guy on Dragon's Den?" She says, "Yeah, I know Liam." I'm like, "No way, we're trying to get in touch with him. Can you link us up?" She was like, "Yeah, I'll speak to him." 5 minutes later, we get your mobile number, and then here we are.
So he was speaking to him through Alison, and I was speaking to you.
Together.
Yeah, I was like,
"Oh right, they're connected."
Yeah. And then I think we just said, let's just hang out. So we met in a pub somewhere. I can't remember where we were, and just there was that energy straight away. This connection of you're doing cool stuff. We've all been on. We very quickly connected the journey we've been on personally, and we just instantly resonated, and we just wanted to help you get that your brand and the name and what you were doing, the mission out there. Yeah. And so we just put you on air. I think within a week you were on air on the Buzz.
I loved one of them. One of the adverts is so funny. I wonder if anyone's crashed the car to that.
Which one? With the
best thing you've had in your mouth in a long time.
I know. It's so suggestive, isn't it?
So good.
Someone in the office went, "What was that?"
But technically, it's true.
It is. Yeah, it's true. Well, that's what you two said.
Your mind's in the gutter with it. It's a different story.
It's amazing. Your faces when you drank it, in the office.
It was literally
crazy, honestly.
So you took us to the office afterwards, and it just the energy in that place, the vibe, the people.
I've never seen such happy packers in my life. Every single one of those, and it was literally shovel in.
It's like that every day, man.
Yeah.
Like even when I'm not there, like I'll go on a video call and like, I'm in it. Like good, man.
There's a buzz in the office.
Yeah. Even if it's a bit slower than what it would be another way, it's like actually the energy's the most important.
Yeah. And yeah, we just connected. I think I'd been through quite a lot of stuff in the business, so I said, look, pick my brains. Like, if there's anything I can do to help, or just soundboard off me, just whatever, let me help you, because I've got so much experience, and if I can stop you falling down one of those those holes, then great, because don't do it if you don't need to. And we just,
not that you needed much help.
No, but it's nice just to know people have got your back, and we have had a few, few chats on the phone and that, and it's priceless. And like, I feel that it's like there's other things to come. There's these synchronicities that are dropping in. With David in Cardigan, the connections with the people that are working with us, and I think there's going to be a really beautiful relationship between Full Power, CACAO, Full Power, and Buzz Manchester.
Definitely.
The Manchester thing as well. It's like, that's what we've got. We can't eradicate that from our bloodstream. Do you know what I mean?
It's our DNA, isn't it?
And it's something to be proud of. It's not that we're exclusive to Manchester.
Yeah.
But
no, we're global.
We're global, but what a great city! What a great city! It's such a creative hub. Yeah. It's a kind city. It's a special. It's got something about it, Manchester. Yeah. And
music's always been a massive connection to this city. So wherever you are in the UK, when you think of Manchester, you're going to think of something musical, whether it's Liam Gallagher with his swagger, or the Hacienda Days, or whatever it might be. But there's definitely a music connection. Yeah, exactly.
Because when I was living in London, there was a lot of these, like, the lads, indie lads, the little Gallagher haircuts, but they were cockneys, like, and you'd meet you and they'd be like, oh, I wish I was from Manchester. Loads of people wish from Manchester.
It was a vibe, wasn't it?
It's cool. And look, we're still the centre of the world, whether it's football or music, culture, CACAO. Like, there's so much good stuff coming from there.
The
revolution of radio.
And that's the thing. So there's definitely going to be incredible stuff that we'll do together. But even it's just the helping of each other. I think even with your team and the guys you work with, it's everyone's on the same level. We're not doing business in the way other businesses are doing business. It's almost turning on its head. It's about value. It's about community. It's about bringing people together. It's not about just the bottom, like money as the primary focus.
It's like empowerment.
Yeah,
support. And I think I think what's made it even more prevalent today to me with you two guys is your relationship. Like when you was talking about it, it's like, fucking hell, you love each other so much. It's like made me really emotional, actually, because it's really, 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 really beautiful. It is really beautiful, like your friendship. So like one of you go first. Like what does Adam mean to you?
He means everything to me. He's a brother. Like we're soul family. We always have been. And we've been through so much together, like, literally.
You don't.
We've been through everything together. The good, the bad, and I can't think of any time in 40 odd years of friendship where we've actually fallen out, had an argument, disagreed. We totally don't agree on everything. Like we'll have phone calls or meetings constantly about the Buzz where he's there and I'm here. But there's no part of us that doesn't trust that we'll come to this in a peaceful and creative way. And there's no ego. Like, I don't care if I'm wrong and he's right. He doesn't care if he's right or he's wrong. It's like, what's best for the station or the greater good. And ultimately, our friendship is the most valuable thing. So the Buzz is great, but it's not. It would never let it get in the way of our friendship, because friendships like this, and we're so lucky to have each other, and we just understand each other. Like we intuitively know each other, where each other's at, and we're very, very lucky. I'm so grateful for this friendship and for what we're doing together, and it's just about the most joyous thing I've ever done. We've both worked and had success in all different ways, but there's nothing, and like financial success, awards, they don't mean anything the next day, or you can sit there with looking at your bank account or your award, but what matters is friendship, connection, and doing cool stuff together. And so
And what do you think his best quality is as a human being?
He's just very kind and very creative and passionate and just a good friend. He's just somebody I trust implicitly. He's got my back. And amazing. Very lucky.
Let's flip it then.
And look at you. Well,
do you know, in all these years, I don't think we've ever had this conversation with each other. I really don't think it's ever. It's like one of those.
CACAO, man.
Yes.
CACAO wants to know.
I think it's a bit sort of the man thing, isn't it? All right.
Love you.
Yeah, all right.
love you, mate.
Yeah,
Love you,
all right,
mate.
mate.
Shoulder barge, but you know.
He means the world to me in terms of. This is going to sound really dramatic, and fuck it, I don't care. I don't think I could have got through a lot of the stuff I got through in my life if he hadn't been by my side, without a shadow of a doubt. When my marriage broke down, that was one of the darkest times of my life. And had he not been there at the end of that phone for me every time I needed to speak to him, or we'd go in, I'd go round to his house when COVID was on, we sit in the back garden or whatever. I could have ended up in a very serious mess. Yeah. Many times in my life, but intuitively he already knows where I am before I even know where I am. There can be a phone call and he'll go, "You all right?" I'll go, "Yeah." I'll go, "Sure." Like, "Yeah." You go, "Okay." And he knows exactly what's wrong. It's just me being a bloke and don't want to sort of let it out straight away, and he'll eventually gets it out of me. But I don't think there's a person in my life, not even my family, that knows me better than he does. I don't know me any better than he does. And life would be damn sight more difficult if he wasn't by my side. Mm-hmm. It's just pure love.
Yes.
Nothing else. It's just pure love. Never had to talk about this before. It's doing me in now.
You don't think about this stuff because you just live in it. You're just doing it. It's only when you ask a question.
Don't ask questions like that again.
That means it's a good question.
It's
vulnerable. Bang. Shit.
Yeah. Vulnerability is a superpower, man.
Yeah, it is.
It's a superpower.
The funny thing is, everything that we've just said.
I'm crying all the way through, by the way.
It's everything we've just said. We actually know this without having said it before. Like, I know he knew my answer. I knew his answer because
we've just never said it to each other. It's
we
like,
probably have a few times but you always say it
not
in
directly.
those key moments. When you're usually in the tough times, don't you? Is when you kind of say, thanks, mate. Like, rather than like those fun, joyous days, you don't stop in those moments to go, because you're just doing it.
We don't judge each other ever on anything, and it doesn't matter what time of day, what time of night it is. I know that he's there, and he knows that I'm there, regardless of what happens. And it doesn't matter what bad stuff he may do or I may do, or good stuff or whatever. Nothing will ever get in the way of our friendship because it's unusually special.
Yeah, and that just in itself makes you richer than most human beings on the planet, and means you've got something that is really, really priceless. So.
Not everybody's got a Rick.
No, not everyone's got an Adam. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I'm grateful for it, and more than he knows.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck off.
Right, so let's wrap it up a little bit. So
please,
where's the buzz going? What's the buzz going to be doing? Like, if you feel like it's going to fulfill all its potential, what's it going to do?
It's going to change the radio industry and how radio is listened to, and it's going to change the music industry and how artists and their fans come together, and how artists make money from their music going forward.
We're going to bring together the artist and their audience together like never before. Right. Where there's going to be a relationship between the artist and the audience it's live. You feel like you can be part of. You're so much closer to your favourite artist than you could ever have been before, because all these artists you can see them at a concert. You might be able to go and do a meet and greet with them, but it's not a connection. And what we're doing is we're bringing the artist and the audience closer than they've ever been before.
Awesome.
And just reinstating and reinventing radio so it's enjoyed again, and so that it's something to be celebrated and not kind of switched off every 15 minutes when the adverts come on.
I wanted someone to create an app that just turned the radio off when the app, but no one ever did it.
No.
So you are that app.
We are, yeah. And
well, we're our ultimate goal is to build our own little ecosystem, our own little radio network, where we're going to have so much there'll never be a time where you want something and it won't be there.
Different.
There you go.
Yeah, different. You know, if you want to...
Like Deliveroo.
Kind of, yeah. If you're in the mood for a burger, you're in the mood for Chinese or something. Yeah, it's a similar kind of thing, yeah.
So like you're listening to the buzz, but you want to listen to some 90s dance bangers, or you want to listen to some 80s indie or 90s grunge. We'll have stations for you to listen to. We'll have different artist stations and just great content, audio. Like the thing with podcasts as well is they can't play commercial music. Yeah. So you can have a podcast with someone talking to a musician. You can't even play their songs in it. It's got this huge void. Yeah. With us, we can do radio content podcasts with music, audio documentaries. We're just going to create incredible content and just be creative and have fun. That's the key to it. We just want and work with great people because that life's about those connections. It's great. It's great. There's two of us, and we can have fun together. But it's about having fun with other people and having fun working with, collaborating. Yeah. That's where the joy is.
And ultimately, radio is the only thing that's live that's left. Yeah. TV, nobody watches live anymore. Mm-hmm. Everybody watches it on demand or the binging on some of the streaming services. Radio is the only thing that literally is happening there, and people listen to at the same time. Yeah. All right, there are radio stations that listen back to shows and this, that, and the other, but generally it's a live thing, and I love that fact that it's live. It's that whole analog. It's that whole owning a piece of vinyl rather than streaming, and
totally.
You know.
Awesome. Where can my audience catch hold of you guys?
Well, you can, first of all, you can listen to us on your Alexa device. Just ask Alexa to play Buzz Manchester, or you can go to your app store and type in Buzz MCR, and the apps will be there on Android or iOS, or we're on the website as well. This is thebuzz.com. Yeah. And we're also on your DAB in Manchester, so if you switch on your DAB radio in your car, just find Buzz MCR. Yeah. We're right below the BBC and right above Capital, so you can't miss us.
Nice. And Instagram,
Buzz Instagram.
This is the Buzz.
This is the Buzz. Facebook as well. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Exciting, guys.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I was actually crying all the way through in a way. It was like, I don't know what it was, but it was really
I could see your eyes filling so many times. I'm trying to hold it together, deep breathing.
Sometimes it wasn't even so emotional. I was like, oh, they love each other so much.